we've launched the Light Body 2 or Soul Alignment Chakra module. It's a continuation of what we see as being a pretty well-defined progression of informational output. Information that's meant to, initiate someone to the light body activation idea and start them out at the very basic level so that they have the tools and the foundation to build on. So when they encounter the higher frequency experience, the higher frequency information of something, as an example, like the chakras, then not only do they have some capacity to interpret, perceive, be impressioned by, but really important too is that they've had time to develop the integration faculties that allow it to work and to start to influence the present day life, but without disrupting the present day life by suddenly overloading with a lot of new perceptions and changes in value systems and changing even in the chemical level of the body. So while people go through the first module, the second module, and a lot of the supplemental material that we put out, I think it's really important for each person to remember that it's meant to be a well-defined progression and to discover how that progression is working synergistically for the goal of bringing people into this new degree of awareness. After this thick defining layer that we call skin, we start to go into the vibrational body, like the etheric body. And we could say that these are similar to these internal membranes because there's a very fluid exchange between those membranes and the ones of the emotional body, and then the ones of the mental body. But then we have this kind of protective layer, which we could say is another vibrational skin at the so-called border of the mental body. It's a protective layer, the same way that our skin is a protective layer. And as the transformation goes on, that layer starts to become more permeable. And as the system detects, most of the time, that it is now ready, it will become more permeable. The awareness of it provokes it to become more permeable, and more energy starts streaming in from the layers that are beyond the mental plane. And you could identify that largely as the soul plane. As our system expands and our own frequency and perception expands, there's a synergistic change in how all those systems interact. And as they become more synergistically interactive, there's more activation and expansion of the whole light body system. And so it's kind of like a loop, and that loop is creating further expansion, and it leads to what I've been referring to as this spiritual birth. And we can analogize that with human birth, because it's like when the birthing process begins, days or even weeks before the actual contractions take place, there are chemical changes, there are subtle physical changes that start to take place. The system is preparing, the system is starting to enter into a completely different mode as the birth is taking place. So these synergistic changes, physically, chemically, energetically, are all leading to this beginning point of how this spiritual birth and transition is taking place. One of the things I think that may be unique about the light body activation is that it looks at the kundalini, the chakras, the bioplasmic body, the cranial bone motion, and the flow of the cerebral spinal fluid, as an example, as a coherent system. And it's a system that is in an accelerated development right now if we zoom out and look at the process of evolution from a single cell to the human species, plural, to where and how are we changing in the moment. some people have come in contact with practices or information that has accelerated their system beyond their capacity to understand and integrate. It sounds good. The people that are teaching that system sound great, but being exposed to that kind of information accelerates, expands. It has its good side to it in terms of certain changes of viewpoint. However, if we don't have that capacity to integrate, then it can really start to be disruptive, because we want to try to bring these things into our present life, have it create changes and transformations, but not to be disruptive. Now, we have disruptions every day. We have stresses every day, and that won't stop, whether we're doing light body work or not. But the light body work helps us to make those adjustments so that disruptions, and we could say things from annoyances to crisis, all in that spectrum, like how we're able to handle it and create adjustments so that we can maintain stability, how we can maintain functionality. Now, it's not only for that, because a lot of times when we do this work, there's exhilarating experiences. There's things that are really like uplifting and very blissful. But just on that 5% of the life where there's challenge, stress, disruption, then we have a way of understanding how that energy is entering into our life system, into our bioplasmic system, and being able to rearrange it so that it harmonizes more easily. Doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, but we have tools that will help to harmonize it to some degree, more or less. So it is a good idea to take a little bit of an assessment to where are we when we're entering into this process. We've worked with people that have had virtually no experience to people that have really done some very high vibration work. Knowing that starting point can tell you like how to plug in and start to let this influence to create more of a balance between your physical earth life and your light body activation. That's what the tools are for, is to know how to move from one to the other. It's how to regulate this emerging body process system. And that's accelerating now through natural course of evolution and development, which we are then stimulating further through noticing it. And that noticing is activating and then creating these bridges between the experience, information, the journeys that take place, and how we're able to interpret and integrate that to where we are day to day.